The honourable member for Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is indeed an honour to rise in this House once again today to debate this important issue. Before I start, though, believe it or not, I will be saying that I'll be splitting my time, and I'll be splitting my time today with my friend and colleague, the honourable member from the Green Party, the honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands. That member has been a strong proponent on this issue. She was a member of the special committee, and I think her voice deserves to be heard in the House today on this important issue. So I look forward to hearing her comments as well later in today's debate. But this is an important issue before us today, and this is an important motion that's been brought forward, because the issue at hand isn't necessarily about electoral reform in itself, though that is certainly important. The real issue is a broken promise from this Prime Minister and this Liberal government. The Prime Minister said one thing to get elected, and then once he was elected, he did all he could to muddle the issue, to change the issue, and then eventually drop the issue altogether. It's a matter of respect, Madam Speaker. Respect for Canadians, certainly respect for Canadian taxpayers for the $4.1 million that was spent on this process, respect for Parliament, respect for us as parliamentarians, and indeed respect for his own caucus and his own caucus members who've done so much work on this important issue. But this is a broken promise, plain and simple, Madam Speaker. And it's one of the classic examples we see where the Liberal Party promises something and then the Liberal government breaks those promises. Whether it's the small business tax rate, the promise they broke, whether it's deficit spending, promising $10 billion deficits and then seeing 2 or 3 times the size of those deficits, promising that their middle-class tax cut would be revenue neutral, and then finding that in fact it's nowhere near revenue neutral, or this example at hand right now on the important issue of electoral reform, another promise broken. And Madam Speaker, I had the great honour and privilege of serving as an associate member on the Special Committee on Electoral Reform. I had the honour to sub in a few times on different parts of the committee's travels. I was able to attend a number of meetings in Atlantic Canada, in Montreal, and finally I had the great honour of joining the committee in Nunavut, in Iqaluit, to hear from the important perspective of the North on electoral reform. And it was always interesting at all these meetings to hear from experts, hear from academics, hear from partisans and non-partisans alike of their opinion on electoral reform. And there were a number of important issues that were raised by a number of individuals. And at our time in Iqaluit, there was one witness in particular, a young Inuk leader who made a very heartfelt presentation to our committee, and his words stuck with me at the time. And in the last 8 days since the minister's announcement that the Liberal Party would be breaking their promise on electoral reform, his words are even more powerful now, and I want to read them into the record. It's from October 17th, 2016, at the Special Committee's meeting in Iqaluit. He said, "The reason I bring up things like overcrowded housing, poverty, and abuse is that if you're not sure where you're sleeping, or if you're sleeping in shifts, and if you're not sure what your next meal is going to be or when it's going to be, and if you're not sure when the next time you're going to be sexually abused or physically abused, who really cares when the next election is?" He went on to say, "I hate to leave you on such a sad note, but that's the reality of the territory." Madam Speaker, this individual brought up some great points about governance in the North and some of the challenges of governance. We also raised a number of these unfortunate issues that are all too prevalent in society. And I'm not saying that this is an excuse for the Liberal Party breaking their promise, because it's not. In fact, it's a betrayal of people such as this individual, who, despite all the challenges that he and his community are facing, the Liberal Party lured him into the promise that they were going to do something. And then they broke that promise, Madam Speaker. This individual gave up his Monday afternoon on a work day to come and speak to the committee, and yet the Liberal Party broke their promise and broke their commitment. Our party, the Conservative Party, has been clear on the issue of electoral reform from the very start. Our position hasn't wavered. We were very clear that when you change the rules of democracy, when you change the rules of the game, every single Canadian should have a say. And that was our commitment from day one. And that commitment didn't change. And in fact, when the final report from the Special Committee, with consensus, I might add, from parties such as the Democrats, the Green Party, the Conservatives, that commitment was in there to a referendum on a proposed change to the electoral system. And we went into this process with an open mind. The ability with our 3 permanent members of the committee to interact with the witnesses, interact with the other members, to come forward with a consensus opinion. But, Madam Speaker, I'd also like to talk a little bit about the consultation process. At the beginning of last summer, the then Minister of Democratic Institutions encouraged members of Parliament, us as members of Parliament, to consult with our constituents through town hall meetings. I might add, Madam Speaker, that it's somewhat patronizing to tell other members of Parliament how they ought to consult with their constituents. It's something we do on a daily basis. We don't need to be told to consult with our constituents, but nonetheless, we do consult. And I was very pleased to undertake a number of consultation methods in my riding. I sent out a survey and a householder to every single member in my individual household in my riding. I hosted a town hall meeting. I had individual meetings with constituents, emails, social media, phone calls, and a variety of input from different people in my constituency. And there's a couple key issues that came out of that consultation. The first was certainly that there was a demand. About 80% of respondents felt that there should be a referendum on any proposed changes. And frankly, I think most Canadians would agree with that. The public opinion polling on that matter has been fairly clear that if you change our democracy, change the way we elect our parliamentarians, a referendum is absolutely necessary. But the other important thing that came out of those consultations was that members of Parliament, or that individuals feel that there's an important link that must be had between parliamentarians, between MPs and the electorate. And when the final report did come out from the special committee, that important linkage was highlighted. It showed that the committee took the input of Canadians, took the feedback of Canadians. And recommendation 2 says very clearly that it should not be a system that does not have a link to MPs should not be considered by the government, as such systems sever the linkage of the connection between voters and their MP. So this report that the special committee came up with is indeed a substantial report that is based on strong consultations with individuals in their ridings, individuals who came to the open mic sessions, who really gave their input. But, that wasn't enough for the Liberal Party. This comprehensive undertaking didn't seem to be enough for the Liberal Party. So what did they do? They came out with a website, mydemocracy.ca. Now, Madam Speaker, I went to mydemocracy.ca and, I had a good laugh, actually. Unfortunately, it's not a laughing matter. It's an important matter. And Madam Speaker, just before Christmas, I submitted an order paper question, Q645, asking a number of questions on mydemocracy.ca. And it got some interesting responses back from the government on mydemocracy.ca. First of all, the cost of this website was $369,058. Now that includes HST, in case anyone was wondering, but over $350,000 spent on this website. But more interesting was the response to Part B of the question. It said that this website would provide an educational experience. And Madam Speaker, it was an educational experience, though not, I'm sure, in the way the Liberal Party thought. But it goes on to say that it would help Canadians understand their own preferences in relation to the characteristics of different electoral systems. It would help Canadians understand their own preferences? Madam Speaker, how condescending, how arrogant that the Liberal Party thinks that they need to help Canadians understand their own preferences on electoral reform. This is simply wrong, Madam Speaker. Canadians are well aware where they stand on these important issues. We found that out from touring the country, from hearing input from Canadians in our communities across the country. They don't need help understanding their preferences, Madam Speaker. They know what their preferences are, Madam Speaker. And unfortunately, the Liberal government has failed to understand the consensus that was garnered from this comprehensive report. And before I wrap up, Madam Speaker, I do want to highlight, because it's been said often by the member's office that there was no consensus on this report. In fact, there was, Madam Speaker. If the members in this House read Recommendation 12, which had the consensus of the majority of this important all-party committee, there was consensus on a referendum, on a proposed system that the government would bring forward with a Gallagher index of 5 or less, and this design be done before a referendum on this issue. It's very clear. That was the consensus by the majority of this committee, all-party committee. Madam Speaker, I'm very proud to speak today. This is a broken promise, plain and simple. The Liberal Party said one thing, the Liberal government did another. Thank you, Madam Speaker.